Hey guys, coming at you again from my closet. I'm sorry. My computer wasn't working at school yesterday, and I knew it was important that I get this stuff out to you in a timely manner. So I'm about to go through the presentation on argumentative writing. I also have a hard copy of our argumentative essay annotation, and we're going to go through and check what you annotated as we cover these things in the presentation. So the first thing that I want to talk about is your claim. Now, claim and thesis are somewhat interchangeable. The difference is, that a claim is normally like your thesis statement in argumentative writing, whereas in expository writing, you're not really making a claim. You're simply saying, this is the thesis of my paper. This is the topic of my paper. So they're kind of the same thing. It's just different terms for the type of writing that you're doing. So today we're focusing on argumentative writing. Remember, the purpose of argumentative writing is basically to persuade the reader to some extent. It's making an argument. So you're kind of persuading the reader to agree with you on whatever it is your argument is or your claim is. So your claim is a statement you're making an argument for. It's the main idea of the entire paper. So it answers the question, what is the author trying to prove? So in this one, which I probably sent you the key as well, the thesis or the claim is that selfies promote a superficial image culture that is hurtful and dangerous to teens. So all of the body paragraphs in this essay are going to support that selfies promote a superficial image culture and that this culture is hurtful and dangerous for teens. Okay. The reasons are a statement that justifies or explains your claim. So reasons answer the following question. Why am I making this claim? So your reasons, the two big reasons in this paper, are going to be the main ideas or the topic sentences of your body paragraphs. So in this case, reason number one, that superficial image culture is hurtful and dangerous for teens. Reason number one is that when teens look at selfies, they automatically make comparisons with the idealized images they have in their minds. Reason number two is going to be the topic sentence of the second body paragraph, which is to make matters worse, many or even most selfies have been edited. So there's that. Next, we have evidence. Evidence is the facts and data that's used to support the reasons and the claim. So, and I'm kind of getting ahead of myself on some of these slides. So in the second body paragraph, which I don't even know if you can see it in this tiny, tiny screen, but the evidence, this is where you might find ethos, pathos, and logos, those appeals. So it's going to answer the question, what facts and information are you using to support your reasons and claim? So in the second paragraph where it says, according to Common Sense Media, more than half of girls and 1/3 of boys aged 6 to 8 feel their ideal body is thinner than their current body weight. So that is part of the evidence to support how teens make comparisons with these idealized images. So that's part of your evidence. And I do want to point out that when it says according to Common Sense Media, that is ethos. That's an appeal to authority because they're using a well-known source, I guess. And it's also logos because when they start citing statistics, that is a logical appeal. It's an appeal to reason. The next sentence where it says negative body image can result in serious physical and mental health problems, such as anorexia and other eating disorders. That also is evidence. And then using things like serious problems, that's pathos because you're trying to show that the problem is not to be taken lightly. All right. So in the fourth paragraph, and the fourth paragraph on here is where we're going to find this next element in our presentation, which is your counterclaim. So a good argumentative paper needs to be able to defend itself, okay? Because somebody is not going to agree with you. So that is why you present your counterclaim. And that is an argument that somebody that does not agree with you would say. It's the other side. Okay, it's going to answer, what would the other side say against your claim? What are other possible viewpoints? So in this one, some people might say, and this is the counterclaim, that actually says some say that selfies are a harmless and enjoyable way to communicate. That is your counterclaim. That posting a selfie is like sending a postcard to your friends and family, inviting them to share in your fun. So it's kind of saying, these selfies aren't that bad. They're not necessarily bad. That gives you, the writer, a chance to give your rebuttal. So your rebuttal is like your chance to address what people that don't agree with you might say. In this case, the rebuttal it starts with the word but, because you're showing a contrast. That is not how selfies are used. So yeah, these would be great if selfies were used that way, but they're not. The reality is they're not. So that's the rebuttal in that one. So your standard outline of an argument is going to have approximately 5 paragraphs. It may not be exactly that way, but your introduction, I think it's on the next slide, it's going to have your hook to get your audience's attention. It's going to have a few sentences familiarizing the topic to the reader or introducing the topic to the reader, and then you're going to state your claim. So that is what should be found in your introductory paragraph. Supporting idea number 1. So whenever you do an outline for your paper, whatever your claim is, you need to think of 2 things that support whatever stance it is you're taking, whatever your claim is, and give a reason and then give some evidence. And make sure you tie them together. So 2 paragraphs like that, and then your counterclaim, because that allows you to make your argument even stronger when you say, well, here's what other people might think, but here's why that's wrong. And then your conclusion just wraps everything up. It's nice and neat. You kind of review what you said in your paper. So, how an argumentative essay convinces readers to agree with the writer's opinion. A lead or a hook. So, let's look at the introduction. Some hooks that are pretty popular are things like, have you ever wanted to go to the moon or something? Like, it's a rhetorical question. It is a decent hook, but I'm going to say it's kind of like a middle school hook. So if all else fails, you can always go with the question. Sometimes it's like a startling fact, like something that should be like, whoa, to the reader when you say it. Sometimes, and in this case, it's an action. So this one starts with smile, snap, edit, post, repeat. That is your hook, is saying 5 commands in a row with an exclamation point. So somebody in my second period, I didn't even put this on the answer key, pointed out that is an example of parallelism. They are repeating commands to make that go together to form an effective hook. So shout out to Blake Collier, because that's actually who pointed it out. Again, you have a claim, you have your supporting arguments, counterclaim, rebuttal. These are this is the terminology for argumentative writing. Okay, so if nothing else, make sure you know what it's talking about when it uses these terms. So, yeah. Answers, so what? The conclusion summarizes and answers, so what? And that answer to so what is kind of like, why should anybody care about this in the bigger picture? So that's when you end your conclusion on a statement that makes the reader think about the bigger picture of these as a whole. Whew, okay. So before we start going over pre-writing, I do want to go over a few things in this essay. So I'm going to get to this other one. Sorry. And I want to review ethos, pathos, and logos, if it takes a second. Remember, logos is an appeal to reason. So it's going to be numbers, stats, facts. Pathos is an appeal to emotions. And so a lot of times you're going to have charged language with pathos. And then ethos is an ethical appeal. So is it the right thing to do? And a lot of times it's going to use like a famous person or a well-respected person, somebody that you might put your trust in to to further that. Like I said, the according to common sense media, that's an example of ethos. Somebody's coming into the room. All right, sorry to pause it. My kiddo came in. Okay, so I'm just going to go over examples of logos. In the very first paragraph, where it says 1 million selfies are posted every day, that is an example of logos, because you're telling a number of how many are posted a day to help familiarize your reader and show that, like, this won't be a small problem. It'll be a big problem. I already mentioned the more than half of girls and 1/3 of boys in the first paragraph. In the third paragraph, where it says 50% of people edit their own images, that is also logos. Okay. I don't want to use this. Okay, so ethos is when they're using something that should be trustworthy or believable. You can read this as much as I can. All right. So some examples of ethos. We already said according to common sense media. In the third paragraph, where it says Renfrew Center Foundation concluded in a recent study carried out. Anyway, the Foundation Center would be an example of ethos, but then the whole study would be the logos there. And I'm trying to see if there's anything else. Nope. And then pathos is using feelings or emotions. So in the first paragraph, where it says tsunami of self-portraits is not as harmless as it appears. Tsunami is charged language because it's trying to show that the number of self-portraits is overwhelming. Calling them a tsunami is also an analogy because it's kind of comparing them somewhat to a storm, and storms are violent. And so using that language kind of creates a negative image for the reader. I'm just going to point out in the very first paragraph, because part of what I had you mark was transitions, the word but, that is showing a contrast. In the second paragraph, we already talked about how serious physical and mental health problems is an example of pathos. We have another transition word in that second paragraph where it says such as anorexia and other eating disorders. Such as is a transition for showing an example. In the third paragraph where it says to make matters worse, that is a transition that shows addition. That also is somewhat pathos because it's using the word worse, like conveys a negative emotion. They also use a rhetorical question in the third paragraph where it says, and why not? Like, you're not really supposed to answer that question. I do want to point out, because this is just a good chance to also talk about those rhetorical techniques, that in the fourth paragraph where we have our counterclaim, where it says, but that is not how they're used. But shows contrast. And remember, it's followed by the rebuttal, which makes sense. Where it says teens post selfies to get feedback, to compare themselves, to present an often false image. That is an example of parallelism because they're repeating the same grammatical structure. To get, to compare, to present. There's also an analogy in that paragraph. Posting a selfie is like sending a postcard. So comparing a selfie to a postcard is an analogy. I've completely neglected the second page of this, which is, and I can actually exit this presentation because we're kind of done talking about ethos, pathos, logos. There actually is a second counterclaim in this paper. So the very top of the second page where it says, it's true that posting a selfie on social media can generate likes and positive comments that can make a person feel good. Like, that would really go against the argument. But then the author gives a second rebuttal that says, however, a transition that shows contrast. If you notice, both of our counterclaims, once they were written, they put the rebuttal, like they started it with a transition word that shows contrast. So, however, the boost one gets from feeling pretty for 5 minutes is like junk food. It tastes good, but it's not nourishing. So that's a second rebuttal. I also want to put comparing that to junk food. That is an analogy. Okay, so the selfie culture that is the norm today is out of control. Charge language. Calling it out of control is charge language and is pathos. Okay, on the last paragraph where it says something with its own dangers and drawbacks, that is also pathos. And then in the last sentence where it says taking, editing, and posting pictures of themselves, that is one last example of parallelism. Okay, this last part's going to be pretty quick because I don't have anything to go over necessarily other than the presentation. All right, so when you get a prompt of an argumentative essay, you need to read the prompt and look at some of what it has. And then it says our online class is as beneficial as face-to-face instruction in the traditional classroom. Now, I think I picked a different one. I linked an example in the lesson plan, but I'm going to fill that out with my face-to-face class. So as we work on that together, then I will actually put stuff in that document. But until we do it face-to-face, there's not actually going to be anything in that document. The first thing you want to do as part of your pre-writing is think of your reasons for and your reasons against, because whichever side you choose, I would personally choose the one that you're able to think of more examples. That's the side you want to take, but you're still going to need that other side because there's one part of your paper when you need to address what people would say against it, your counterclaim. And so you're going to end up using both sides if for no other reason than for your counterclaim and rebuttal. After you have your T-chart, make the skeleton of your paper to think about, okay, here's how I feel about it. Here's going to be my claim or my thesis. Here's my first reason. And here's some examples or evidence I can give to support that reason. Here's number 2. And here's some evidence and examples I can give. So put all of this down so you have things to think about. But then you're obviously going to add to it when you put it in paragraph form. Otherwise, it would be super choppy if you just copied those paragraphs, because you need to spend some time putting in those transitions and really illustrating those reasons to the reader. Okay. You need to gather evidence and present a well-reasoned argument. Whew. So here are some examples of leads and hooks. I already mentioned a quote is pretty good, a shocking fact. These are very good because they really help your reader imagine a setting or imagine a story to kind of start the paper. These are what I'm going to call more mature hooks than just the rhetorical question that I talked about earlier. I'm not going to spend a lot of time because you have access to this presentation. We already mentioned you want to start with a hook, introduce the topic, and familiarize your reader, then give your claim. Your thesis statement is going to tell your reader what your paper's about. So you should be able to find your thesis and or claim, same thing, in that introduction. And I should be able to tell what each of your body paragraphs are about. Probably with the format we just gave, you would have, I don't know right now. Either way, you would just probably have 2 here instead of 3. Okay. I'm going to ask questions in the Edpuzzle about this slide. So I'm going to make it where you can actually read them all. Okay. My plan is to also embed questions about a third, another paper. And so you'll see that as we do that. Just a reminder about your counterclaim. Why do you address the opposing side? Because if you can show people if people think there's weaknesses in your argument, it gives you a chance to defend against those alleged weaknesses and show why people that don't agree are wrong, basically. All right, I don't know why it's like this. Do's and don'ts. Again, I would definitely read this on your own time. The I feel, I believe, I think, that is key. my 8th graders writing an argumentative paper, and I literally said, anytime you see, I think, just take it out. Take it out. You don't want anything that's supported by you, because, not to be rude, but it's not your opinion that matters. You need to say something as a fact, or find some sort of credible source to cite that fact for you, because that's going to have more credibility to the reader than just your opinion. I cannot say this enough. Review in a few sentences what you said in your paper, but do not copy and paste your intro. You're kind of summarizing, and then again, at the end it with that so what. Explain why your essay is important or relevant, and why it should stick with the reader beyond that point. Okay, so that first sentence, that's almost restating your claim. I would bet that the body paragraphs are about being healthy, or sorry, when it comes to nothing can be as healthy, exciting. Actually, I'm not sure. You give some examples of things that they probably talked about in their paper. And then it says, we live in a world where everyone is focused on social media and fitting in with the crowd. It's important to remember that working out creates a powerful feeling of self-confidence. So this is why this matters in the big picture. And I think I'm done. So, all right, I'll see. I don't know. I'm sure I'll talk to you guys soon.